I've always wanted to make American art from my vantage point, you know. And it took a long time. You speak of segregation growing up in the South. You know how many kids that grew up during my generation, baby boomers, that were black, that never felt like an American? You know, just did not ever feel like an American. And I remember when I was growing up, you know, name calling, you know, being prohibited from going to certain parts of the city late at night, the police constantly harassing you. They had a rule that no more than 3 of us could be together, walking down the street. So, and they raised their kids to do that. And when I was growing up, they had little kids. They were raising their kids, 13-year-old, 12-year-old boys, getting black men to say yes, sir, to kids. So the psychological damage was just ongoing. And then the terror. It wasn't just psychological damage. I mean, a lot of these guys, these men that grew up, my father's generation, grew up in Mississippi and all of that, could be killed for the most minor infraction. If it's raining outside and there's a white person or something walking down the sidewalk, you're supposed to step off, let them walk. I mean, just really insidious. It's insane if you really look at it. I mean, who would engage in something like that and have that kind of contempt for another person, or just to spend that kind of time doing that? So I've just totally rejected it on all levels, totally. I used to go to construction sites. I still have an image in my head with my grandfather and my father and my uncles. They would do the construction work. A lot of the work that you see immigrants do, Italians and stuff here in the North, well, black men and Native Americans mostly did that kind of work in the South, in the Delta. So they would take mortar, sand, water, and cement, and you'd have to mix it up to a certain consistency. If you put too little of anything in it, it didn't work. If you put too much water in it, it didn't work. It had to be perfect. And so I learned a lot of stuff like that, but mostly the mixing of the cement and the transformation of the materials. I liked that, and I always want to experiment my way out of it. I wasn't interested in buying a tube of a lot of paint, you know, whatever brand, what's in new. I have nothing against these brands, but I wasn't interested in having the same stuff that everybody else had. So I said, I got to do something about this. You know, I got to know what's going to be in my materials. So I got to figure out a way to make this stuff, and I did. I read up on it, I researched it, and then I tweaked it, and I decided that what consistency I wanted. I didn't want it so thick, I didn't want it too thin. I have 3 or 4 different levels of varnishes that I make, that I use from raw materials. And I make paints. I do anything that I need to do to make a picture work. Whatever it is, that's what I do. White politicians, post-slavery, post-Reconstruction. And they said, well, you blacks have to make your own way. This is with nothing. Nothing, no land, no money, no Social Security, no health care, no protection, no nothing. Make your own way. Guess what? We did. So I've always approached painting that way. Make your own way. So I do. And I use those terms in everything, every aspect of my painting. I make things. I make it my way. I make it my own way. And the result is a product of me approaching it that way. And I try to do that in my classes. I try to show the students that, you know, when they try to do shortcuts or they get lazy or they said, I'm tired, I say, well, you either want to do this or you don't. You want to finish the race, you want to go the distance or you don't. And I get people from like all walks of life. I mean, I get people that are super wealthy, that have been heads of corporations. doctors. I get students from all the Ivies and everything. I got 4 now, from Yale and Harvard and Cornell and all these places. You know, you come in, you have a skill set, you have something, and I'll take what you have, and we'll try to get better at that. So that's what the league offers. It really does. It offers that. So I never would have been a really good civil rights leader. But I am interested in power, and this is some of the things I learned from Dr. King. You just excel at what you know how to do. And no matter how you get there, you will have power. And I have more power now than I've ever had in my entire life. And I've done a number of interviews, and I've said that I've always felt that I was as good as anybody out there. I know I'm as good as anybody out there. Well, you say you're as good as anybody out there. I said, well, if you don't believe me, I'll have to keep proving it. And so that's the way that I go about this. I mean, I'm not being conceited or vain, but the evidence is the work. The power that I have is the power of what I've done in the arts. And so I speak my piece now. Some of the stuff I've said now, I couldn't have said 30 years ago. Nobody would listen. Now they listen.